Okay, let's dive right into this stack of sources you've shared with us. It's all centered on unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAPs.
Right. What most people used to just call UFOs.
Exactly. And look, we know you listening are probably pretty up to speed on the history, the government stuff, the big questions.
Yeah, people following this topic know the basics.
So our goal here isn't really to go over all that again. It's about taking these specific sources we have in front of us and pulling out what's genuinely new, what's surprising, what's most relevant right now.
What do these latest reports actually tell us?
Precisely. And maybe the best place to jump in, because that's just so fascinating from these recent reports, is this discovery in Colombia. A mysterious metallic sphere.
Ah, yes, the Buga sphere. That one's definitely generating buzz. Found, March 2nd, 2025?
That's the date reported, yeah. And the descriptions of these sources, they're pretty detailed. What makes it stand out?
Well, its physical characteristics, for a start. Metallic sphere, sure, but only about 4.5 pounds. And witnesses apparently said it felt really cold to the touch.
Unusually cold. That's odd.
It is. But then you get into the structure they describe, the composition. That's where it gets really interesting, according to these reports.
Okay.
The researchers looking at it mentioned a 3-layered structure, and crucially, no visible welds, no seams, no joints.
That sounds familiar. That detail about no visible seams pops up in other UAP accounts sometimes.
It does. It suggests, maybe some kind of advanced or at least non-standard manufacturing. One radiologist on the team, Dr. Velasquez, is quoted saying it just felt artificial because it wasn't made like anything he recognized.
And inside?
Inside, they reported finding 18 microspheres, tiny little balls arranged around a denser core in the middle.
Okay, complex structure, weird coldness, no seams, and then there were markings on it.
Markings, yeah, on the outside, described as looking like a mix of ancient scripts. Things like runes, Ogham, even Mesopotamian writing were mentioned.
Right, and this is where the story gets, let's say, controversial. The sources talk about researchers using AI to decode a message from these markings.
That is the claim reported, yes. And the message they supposedly got is, well, it's very philosophical.
Going.
Something like, the origin of birth through union and energy in the cycle of transformation, meeting point of unity, expansion, and consciousness, individual consciousness. Pretty dense stuff.
Wow. Okay. And the team that found it, how do they interpret that?
Their take, as reported, was that it's a call for humanity to elevate our collective awareness.
So if you just read the reports, artificial sphere, strange structure, ancient script, decoded message about consciousness.
Yeah.
It sounds potentially huge.
Absolutely huge, yeah. And it's definitely sparked a lot of online talk, some linking it to ETs, as you'd expect, and as the sources note. But it's really important. The sources also highlight significant skepticism.
Right. Julia Mossbridge, the physicist.
Exactly. She's quoted emphasizing we need rigorous science here. She even floated the idea it could just be a really cool art project.
Which is, a possibility you have to consider.
Her point, and others mentioned echo this, is you can't jump to conclusions. Extraordinary claims need extraordinary proof, verified properly. She mentioned groups like the Galileo Project and the SCU are set up for that kind of hard, verifiable analysis.
And that kind of analysis needs to happen here, especially since it was found outside the U.S.
Which brings up all sorts of other issues Mossbridge pointed out, right? International cooperation, who owns it? How do you even analyze something like this consistently across borders?
Yeah, good point.
But her bigger takeaway, mentioned in the sources, is that whether the sphere is real or not, these kinds of events, even just the idea of them, they force us to think about our own limits, about maybe something much bigger going on.
Okay, so that's the sphere. Let's shift gears now from this object found in a field to the corridors of power in the U.S. Congress. These sources cover recent testimony, too, from back in November 2024.
Ah, yes, the House Oversight hearing. Unidentified anomalous phenomena exposing the truth. Had quite a few experts testifying.
And Luis Elizondo was definitely a key figure there. What were his main points, according to these reports?
Elizondo was pretty blunt. He stated, flat out, UAPs are real. And not just real, but advanced technologies, not made by us or any known government, are actively monitoring sensitive military sites. Globally.
And he claimed the U.S. has this tech, too.
Yes, claimed the U.S. has recovered UAP technologies, and maybe even more alarmingly, that some of our adversaries might have it as well.
Adversaries having it, too. That definitely ups the stakes from a national security angle. The sources mention a specific back and forth he had with Representative Mace.
They do. He confirmed to her, on the record, the existence of secret UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering programs. Programs specifically designed, he said, to identify and figure out what he called alien craft.
But he couldn't give details.
No, he said he was restricted by a signed document, couldn't discuss specifics.
So these are pretty direct claims. Secret programs, reverse engineering non-human craft. It builds on, or maybe adds detail to, things we've heard before, like David Koresh talking about non-human biologics, which one source mentions came up via NPR previously.
It absolutely adds another layer to those earlier claims, yeah. Moving from just biologics exist to we have active programs trying to reverse enginear the craft. Elizondo called UAPs an enigma and a frustration.
And he had a pretty stark warning too, didn't he?
He did. He framed it by saying if these things were adversarial technology we didn't understand, it could represent an intelligence failure eclipsing that of 9/11 by an order of magnitude.
The powerful language. What about Michael Schellenberger? He testified too. What did the sources say about his input?
Schellenberger brought up an alleged classified program name, Immaculate Constellation, and he also shared an account of an alleged incident with an F-22 fighter jet.
What happened?
He reported it was boxed in by, I think, 3 to 6 UAPs.
Boxed in, okay. And then there was Tim Gallaudet talking about the Go Fast video.
Right, Admiral Gallaudet. He added another piece to this puzzle of maybe information control or just weirdness. He described being involved in a naval exercise, getting an email with that Go Fast video attached.
Okay, standard enough.
But then, according to his testimony reported here, the very next day, that email just vanished. From his inbox, from others who got it, no explanation, poof.
Huh, that's strange. So we have these really striking claims coming out of Congress. Non-human tech, monitoring adversaries, secret programs, specific incidents, maybe even disappearing evidence. How does all that square with the official government line presented in these same sources?
Well, the official line, mainly from the Pentagon's AARO office, their March 2024 report is cited, is much more reserved. It states AARO hasn't found any evidence of extraterrestrial spacecraft. Thus far, that qualifier is always there.
Right, thus far. And the head of AARO at the time, Sean Kirkpatrick, he put a number on how many reports are actually considered anomalous.
He did. He said only about 2 to 5% are truly anomalous. But, and this is key, he attributed that low percentage mostly to a lack of good data.
Ah, okay. So it's not that only 2-5% are weird. It's that only 2-5% have enough data to even be categorized as properly anomalous.
Exactly. For most incidents, they just don't have enough clear, high-quality information to say what it is. It's a data gap problem, not necessarily proof that nothing strange is happening.
Which ties into the whole shift in language from UFO to UAP that's mentioned.
Precisely. Unidentified anomalous phenomena. It's broader on purpose. Includes things underwater, things that move between air and water transmedium objects. The idea explicitly stated in reports and testimony is to try and reduce the stigma.
Get rid of the giggle factor associated with UFOs.
Right. And hopefully encourage more pilots, more military personnel, more scientists to report things accurately without fear of ridicule, because that stigma is highlighted as a huge problem.
Ryan Graves is mentioned again on that point, right? Still a barrier for witnesses.
Absolutely. He's consistently pointed out how pilots worry about their careers if they report unusual sightings. And Michael Gold from the NASA UAP study side also emphasized needing two things: better scientific tools and overcoming that stigma to allow for open, rigorous inquiry.
Speaking of NASA, their study team's findings are in here too. What was their conclusion?
Pretty similar to AARO's, based on the unclassified data they reviewed, no definitive proof of extraterrestrial origin thus far. But they also acknowledge some incidents just defy conventional explanation with the data we have.
And what did they recommend?
Their recommendations hit the same notes. We need better data collection, systematic reporting, improved ways to analyze the data, and yes, reduce the stigma.
And they framed the whole ET idea in a specific scientific way, didn't they?
They did. They called the extraterrestrial hypothesis the hypothesis of last resort. Basically, in science, you try to rule out every known conventional explanation first before you seriously consider something truly extraordinary like non-human intelligence.
Okay, so pulling these threads together from the sources, we've got these dramatic claims from insiders about non-human tech and secret programs, countered by official reports saying, no proof yet, but we see weird stuff and need more data.
And woven through all of it is this constant refrain. We need better science, better data, and less stigma.
That tension is really clear. And, connecting this to the bigger picture, there's another study in this stack that gives a really interesting historical view. Might put some of today's reports in context.
You mean the SCU study? Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, their May 2025 paper.
That's the one. Takes a much longer perspective.
It does. It's apparently the fourth in a series they've done, looking really closely at UAP activity patterns, specifically between 1945 and 1975, using historical data.
Okay, so almost 30 years of data. What's the big takeaway from their analysis?
The core finding, they argue, is a noticeable, significant shift in how UAPs behaved, or at least were reported to behave, over that period.
A shift. Okay, let's break that down. What did the early part of that period look like, according to the study?
The early years, say 1945 up to about the mid-60s, were marked by high visibility, more overt actions, what the study calls display-type activities.
Like what?
Things like radical flight maneuvers, flying in formations, actions that the researchers felt could be interpreted as maybe trying to send a message, inferential messaging, and really significantly, a focus on military atomic sites.
Right when atomic technology was developing and being deployed.
Exactly. Late 1940 sightings near atomic facilities. The Malmstrom missile base incident in 67 fits the pattern, another cluster in 75. A sustained interest in our most potent weapons tech.
Interesting. Did the study mention any communication attempts back then?
It did cite some reports of limited contact efforts, specifically mentioning alleged IFF-coded transmissions like friend or foe signals back in 1957, suggesting maybe rudimentary attempts to interact electronically.
Okay, so early on, visible displays, maybe messaging focus on nukes, some possible coded signals. How did that change later on into the 70s?
According to the study, by the 1970s, the activity shifted. It became mostly nighttime sightings. Observations tended to be longer. And there were reports of close approaches, but often to just small groups of people.
And the nature of those later encounters.
The authors offered an interpretation that these later actions, well, they could potentially be seen as attempts at basic human behavioral studies, watching us up close but more subtly.
Behavioral studies, that's quite an interpretation to draw from historical sighting reports.
It is a striking interpretation, yeah. But the overall trend they map out is clear. The activity seemed to become more clandestine, less showy. And, interestingly, witnesses seem to perceive these later encounters more negatively than the earlier ones.
Wow. Using pattern analysis on decades of data to try and infer intent or strategy. That's a compelling approach. Moving from showing off near our weapons to quietly studying us.
It really shows how groups like the SCU are trying to apply serious analytical methods to this historical data, looking for patterns that might tell us something about the phenomena themselves.
Okay, so if we step back now and try to summarize the different viewpoints and findings from this whole set of sources.
Well, you've got the strong claims from people like Elizondo, maybe bolstered by interpretations of things like the Columbia sphere, pointing towards non-human intelligence, super advanced tech, maybe even long-term presence and secret U.S. programs dealing with it.
Then on the other side, you have the official government position from AARO, NASA, saying, look, no definitive ET proof yet. We acknowledge unknowns, but it's mostly a data problem right now.
Right. And alongside that, you have the scientific community voices, Mossbridge, the NASA team itself, groups like SCU and the Galileo Project, pushing hard for rigorous investigation, better data, less stigma, caution about conclusions, but actively working on the problem.
And the big hurdles remain clear across the board. Getting good data, killing the stigma, and figuring out international cooperation when something pops up, like that sphere in Columbia.
Definitely. But what feels significant reading through all this is just how many different groups, government, science, independent researchers are now seriously engaged in trying to figure this out, using more systematic approaches.
So bringing it back home, why does all this matter to you listening? What are the implications we can pull from these sources?
Well, number one, pretty obviously the national security angle. If Elizondo's claims about advanced non-state craft monitoring military sites are even partly true, that's huge.
Absolutely. And then there's the potential for just revolutionary technology. If those crash retrieval and reverse engineering claims, maybe even involving non-human biologists like Crush suggested, have any basis in reality, the implications are staggering.
Staggering, yeah. And fundamentally, the kind of physics-defying behavior described in some UAP reports just challenges our basic understanding of how the universe works, aerodynamics, propulsion. It pushes the known boundary.
And maybe on a deeper level, it taps into that fundamental human curiosity, right? The drive to explore, to understand our place. What could these phenomena tell us about the cosmos, about life beyond Earth? Are we alone? What else is out there?
Exactly. And the fact that governments and scientific bodies are becoming more transparent, even if it's incremental and debated, compared to the old days of Project Blue Book mostly explaining things away, or classified documents slowly trickling out, that itself marks a real shift.
Okay, so we've covered quite a bit. That mysterious fear in Colombia stirring debate, the pretty explosive claims from congressional testimony about secret programs and non-human tech, that historical analysis from the SCU suggesting UAP behavior changed over decades, and this ongoing push for real science and transparency.
It's definitely a complex picture, and it feels like it's moving fast.
So let's leave you with a final thought, drawing particularly from that historical perspective in the SCU study. And it's an interpretation based on their analysis, but if UAP activity really did shift over decades, from overt displays near our most sensitive weapon sites to quieter nighttime observations, maybe even looking like behavioral studies, and perhaps even including early attempts at coded transmissions. What could that imply about the intelligence behind it, about their long-term goals? And maybe the most unsettling question, what might they have been learning about us all this time?